All right, good evening, members of council, administration. Welcome to our public meeting on July 27th. And I would like to take this opportunity to call certainly our meeting to order and welcome those who are viewing from the comforts of home. And so with that, we'll carry on. I think the only member of council, Councilor Rico Tonio, will be off on personal leave today. And also, I'd like to report out that there were no closed meetings this evening. And to the members, any disclosure or pecuniary interest on the agenda is presented to you this evening. I hear none. We'll have that duly reflected. And we'll move on to the minutes of the regular council meeting of July 13th and the public council meeting July 13th, and that was on the Sear Drain. If I could have a motion that the minutes of that, of both July 13th, RCM and PCM be approved as presented. Deputy Member Keddy, Councilor Houston. Any errors or omissions on those minutes as presented? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. Do have supplementary additions this evening, so if I could have a motion on the supplementary, Councilor Altenhoff and Councilor Dowie. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce certainly our Director of Public Works and Environmental Services, Mr. Phil Bartnick. And I was going to have a discussion and certainly a presentation on the July 16th rain event that we did have, and at the same time bring his report forward. So with that, Mr. Bartnick, I'm going to relinquish the floor to you and make your presentation.
Thank you and good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Thank you for giving me an opportunity tonight to present the rainfall event of July 16th. Dave, if you could pull up the presentation for me. Thank you. Next slide, please. I just wanted to add that we do intend to post this presentation on the town's website and promote it on the town's social media platforms after the meeting tonight as well. So on July 16th, the town received up to 90 millimeters of rain in a 27-hour period, with 71 millimeters falling within a 6-hour period between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. At the peak of the storm, it registered just under a 1 in 50-year storm event. Next slide, please. The rainfall exceeded the capacity of the storm sewer system, which resulted in surface and road flooding throughout the town. Stormwater flows entered into the sanitary system, which resulted in the system surcharging. One back, Dave, thank you. Designing infrastructure larger than a 1 in 2 or a 1 in 5 year storm event is typically unfeasible and usually impractical. And that's why street flooding is such an integral part of the design for storm sewer systems. Next slide, please. So there are 5 rain gauges throughout the town, as depicted on the map on this slide. And the largest rainfall total on July 16th was registered at our Brighton pump station, which was just shy of 90 millimeters over the 27-hour period. Next slide, please. So this slide was produced by a local consulting engineer who uses the NextRad DPR radar rainfall data. So the data was calibrated to the rain gauges that we have in town, as well as the city of Windsor. And this gave us an estimated depiction of the rainfall totals throughout the town. So essentially, another tool in the tool belt when trying to analyze some of these storm events. Next slide, please.
Phil, before you move over on that, can you explain the on the previous slide, on that slide there, the color scheme and then correlate that can you correlate that with your rain gauge, like the different colors?
Yep, absolutely. So in the bottom left corner, there's kind of a blue shading. So that is between 50 and 60 millimeters. And as you get to the darker green, lighter green, you start to get the heavier rainfall events with the orange and the red being the most severe. So the orange, there's a little legend in the top left corner. It's hard to see on the presentation, but I think once it's posted online, it'll be a little bit clearer. But the orange is between 90 and 100 millimeters, so upwards of 4 inches. And then the red is a depiction between 100 mils and 110 mils, right? So it gives us a more clear picture, because I think during some of the events, our rain gauges are telling us, are giving us some information. And then we do receive phone calls and emails from residents who have rain gauges in their backyards that are kind of in between and are registering a little bit different information than what we're gathering, right? So this kind of newer technology based on the radar does kind of paint a clearer picture of what's happening elsewhere within the watershed, not just around those specific rain gauges themselves.
So when I look at our boundary, Mr. Bartnick, you know, all along the east town line drain and also the Pike Creek area, that it looks like the highest intensity of the rain was in that corridor.
Yep, that is correct. Yep, absolutely. And you know, and I think it correlates with the rainfall that we were seeing at the Brighton rain gauge at the Brighton Road pump station, where we were seeing that being the heaviest rainfall amount. So you can kind of see as you move to the west and further into the city of Windsor, they had less rainfall than we did, as well as what Lakeshore experienced as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you, Dave. So this is a depiction of the rainfall totals at the Brighton pump station rain gauge. And as you can see, well, it's maybe a little bit hard to see, but the largest amount of rain that was received was between 10:30 in the morning and 12:30 just after lunch on the graph. Next slide, Dave. This slide is, so the town's rain gauge data is used to plot the rain event on the IDF curve, which is the intensity, duration, frequency curve, used by engineers for designing storm infrastructure and classifying specific rain events themselves. And on this slide, you'll see, because we use the Brighton Road, it did kind of peak very close to the 1 in 50 year storm event. Next slide, please. So this graphic depicts the design events in green on the left of the page, and you'll see the volumes for various design storm events over a 6-hour period. Most municipalities design storm infrastructure to the 1 in 2 or the 1 in 5 year storm events. So if you look at the very far left, that would equate to 40.5 millimeters over a 6-hour period. It's important to note that when we do reference storm events, such as a 1 in 100 year storm, doesn't mean that they occur once in 100 years. It's actually referencing the statistical probability of the occurrence of that storm in any given year, right? So the 1 in 100 would mean that there is a 1% chance of that storm occurring. The rainfall events on the right, which are color coded in blue, include the July 16th rain event and the more significant storms from 2016, 2017, as well as Hurricane Hazel that took place in 1954. So as you can see, the volume within the 6-hour period at 71.1 far exceeded the 2-year and the 5-year events. So it is not surprising that street flooding was experienced. Next slide, please. So the town does have 5 to 6 sanitary flow monitors on the sanitary sewer system that we use to collect data. Their locations do move from time to time, and additional monitors are added for the completion of modeling analysis on the system. So this slide gives a screenshot of the information that is provided. So being the rainfall intensity in orange, the volume of rain received in blue, the flow within the sanitary pipe, which is kind of the blue squiggly line there, as well as the depth, which would be the height of the surcharge within the system. So a lot of data compacted onto on one slide, and again, it's another very important tool in the toolbox that we use when experiencing some of these storms. So all of these points on this slide, I did kind of discuss them earlier in the presentation. I wanted to ensure they were included in the slide deck for when this is posted on the town's website. We can go to slide 12, please. Thank you. So all storm and sanitary pump stations were on and operational and pumping at capacity during the event. There were no blockages in the sewers. The storm and sanitary sewers were overwhelmed. And we also had public works and facility staff on site to ensure the pumps were operational and clear of debris during the event. Next slide. So location of basement flooding. So this is kind of a snapshot as of July 21st to the town's survey, the online survey. So the flooding of basements occurred primarily north of County Road 42. There were 3 or 4 basements that did flood in the Old Castle area, but I think we wanted to kind of focus on the north end here because of the majority of the reported calls. So basement flooding causes, so water entering through walls and windows, failed and overwhelmed residential sump pumps, or surcharged sanitary sewers. So of the 91 reports of flooded basements, 34 were attributable to sump pump failures, 52 from floor drains or plumbing due to sanitary surcharging, and 5 were from unknown causes. So this slide is taken from a previous report to council and highlights the significant rain events that the town has experienced since 1981. So we have been adding to it, unfortunately, over the years from some of the rain events in 2016, 17. We did have a significant rain event last year in August with just close to about 111 millimeters, but that was primarily in the Old Castle area. Next slide, please. So basements flood by many different ways during heavy rainfall events. Your stormwater is overwhelming the sump pump. You could have sump pump failure due to power outages, overuse or malfunction. There could be a block connection between the residence and the main sewer in the street. There could be a backup of wastewater and stormwater through the sanitary system, usually through the floor drain or fixtures within the basement. Could have flooding through cracks and holes in the basement walls or floors. And lastly, overland flow through openings in the residence. Excuse me. This diagram further depicts the various ways flooding can occur in a home. It can be found in the Handbook for Reducing Basement Flooding, which is published by the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction. And this is posted, not only this slide, but the entire handbook is posted on the town's website for residents to access. Next slide. So causes of sanitary sewer backup, typically related to infiltration into leaky sewers, whether that's on the public side or the private side. Inflow into sanitary manholes located on flooded roads or low-lying areas, inflow through cross connections of downspouts into sanitary sewers, or cross connections within the homes themselves, whether it's the floor drains, foundation drains, or the sump pump. And lastly, foundation drains being directly connected to the sanitary sewer. So this diagram further depicts sewer backup in a home and some of the points that I just discussed. Again, this is also found in the handbook for reducing basement flooding, which is posted on the town's website. So what are the actions homeowners can do to reduce the risk of basement flooding? Homeowners can ensure ground and pavement structures around residents slope away from the building, properly install and maintain sump pumps, remove cross connections between the sump pump, sanitary pipes, or the floor drains, install and maintain backwater valves or a sewage ejector pump, disconnect downspouts from storm sanitary piping, ensure there's no cracks in the stormwater piping around the home, also ensure there's no cracks or holes in the basement walls or floors that may allow water to enter into the basement, provide backup power supply to the sump pump. And we do encourage residents to visit the town's website for further information. So the town does have a flood prevention subsidy program where for backwater valves, we do offer 80% up to $800, and foundation drain disconnections or 50% up to $1,060. So the chart below is a good indication of how the program has fared since inception in 2012. So definitely after some of the major rainfall events in 2016 and 17, there was a larger uptake in the program. And we're seeing that over the last week or so here with some of the rain events from July 16th, as well as the one from over the weekend. So a very common question that we have been receiving: why do roads flood so often? So again, storm sewers are typically designed to a 1 in 2 or 1 in 5 year storm event. So that equates to about 41 millimeters or 53 millimeters over a six-hour period. And that's based on historical data in the region. Road flooding is expected during larger rain events that exceed the capacity of the storm sewers. And most new subdivisions are designed to include temporary road storage up to 1 foot during major rain events as part of their stormwater controls. Another common question that we do receive: how does development impact flooding? So any proposed developments that are required, any proposed developments are required to implement stormwater management controls to ensure there's no adverse impacts to the system. So we do review their allowable release rate, which is typically based on the receiver, whether that's a sewer, a drain, or a creek. They implement temporary on-site storage. They also have regard to the 1 in 100 year rainfall event and the volume of water and where that would be stored on site. These stormwater plans are designed by professional engineers using provincial guidelines as well as regional standards that were just recently passed in 2019. The town stormwater master plans and modeling are essential tools that administration uses to assist developers as well as analyze the system of potentially what impacts a development may have and what their allowable release rates are to ensure that there are no problems downstream. And some of the private stormwater facilities that we do see surface storage in parking lots or swales. Underground storage chambers are becoming a little bit more frequent over the last number of years. And also stormwater ponds are typically used, whether they're dry ponds or wet. So the next two slides, slide 23 and 24. So the town does have a flood mitigation strategy. It was outlined in Council Report PWES 2018-17, and it is a multifaceted plan to reduce the impact and lessen the extent of basement flooding associated with severe rainfall events. And the following list of items, I believe there's 18 of them, is further detailed in that council report. And we can post that report along with the presentation for ease of access. Slide 25, please, Dave. Thanks. So the next couple of slides. So recent actions undertaken by the town. So the following list of storm and sanitary studies and projects, they're spanning from 2004 up to 2028. They total just shy about $80 million. So I do believe there's 4 or 5 slides here. I won't go into great detail, but I did want to highlight a few of the projects, some of the larger projects. So the town did fully reconstruct 2 storm pumping stations, the Brighton Road Pump Station for $5.6 million, the Manning Road Storm Pump Station for about $8.6 million. And both of those, one was, the Brighton was in 2008, the Manning was just recently in 2014. Also in 2014, the Lakewood Park Sanitary Pump Station and Storage Trunk was installed for $4.3 million, another large endeavor that the town undertook. In 2018, we did a sanitary sewer rehabilitation project to remove I&I from the system. We did get a grant for that, and the project was about $3.6 million. And we did have money allocated on an annual basis for I&I removal. This program and this project that we did essentially accelerated about 18 years of work into 18 months. So we have a really good handle on, plugging all those holes for I&I on the town sanitary system itself. Manning Road Phase 2 currently underway for $5.6 million. So that will divert the stormwater into the Lakewood Park storm channel and utilize that park as a floodplain. And lastly, we are undertaking design on the the disaster mitigation and adaptation fund projects. So it's kind of referred to as the DMAF projects. So those are 3 pump stations that are getting totally reconstructed. 2 of them are going to get merged into one and the other one reconstructed. And that is a $26.75 million endeavor spanning from 2021 over to 2028. I also wanted to highlight that we are still working on our sanitary sewer model update that we do hope to bring to council later this year. We have been working on storm drainage master plans. We did finish the one for the north end of town. We are finalizing the Old Castle storm master plan as we speak and hope to bring that to council in the next few months. And as well, not to be forgotten, we're also working on the shoreline management plan. So maybe not flooding pertaining to rainfall events, but definitely flooding pertaining to lake flooding events. So those are some of the larger studies that we're undertaking. So the next 2 slides, the town has been successful with grant applications over the years to a tune of about $27.7 million. Again, some of the, if you go back 1 slide, Dave. Oh, thank you. So again, we have listed the name of the grant as well as the project that the money did go towards. So the Brighton Road Pump Station in 2008, Manning Road Pump Station, we did get the money in 2012. Go to the next slide, Dave, please. We do have over $3 million that has been set aside for the Manning Road Improvements Phase 2 that are currently underway. And we did mention the DMAF fund, intake number 3. We did get a grant for $10.7 million for those 3 pumping stations. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in closing, the town's past actions, proposed modifications, and infrastructure improvements are significant. However, they alone will not guarantee that that basement flooding event will ever occur again. We continue to encourage residents to take action to inspect and modify their properties to reduce the impact of heavy rainfall events. We also encourage them to visit the town's website for further information on the flood prevention subsidy program, as well as the publications of reducing basement flooding and how to protect your home from basement flooding. And the combined effect of all of these actions on the public side and private side will serve to reduce the impact of heavy rainfall events and lessen the extent of basement flooding associated with these events. And with that, Your Worship, I wanted to thank you and members of council for the opportunity to present to you today.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bartnick. I mean, this is enlightening, and I think, you know, in terms of you mentioned you're going to have this on our, all of our social media outlets, and I hope on YouTube and certainly on our website. I think this is invaluable information, and I think that the very, very key takeaway out of all of this, it's not all on the hands of the municipality. We all have an individual responsibility to make sure that you know, our infrastructure that are in public hands is one thing, but also on a private side to make sure that it's operational and the proper maintenance is taking hold. And maybe we take it. Maybe I think we did it a few years ago on the backflow preventers and so forth. Kind of a demonstration. I think your predecessor, Mr. Piazzik, did quite a thing on YouTube and so forth. I think it'd be apropos as well as to you know, also bring that forward, because realistically, we all understand these rain events, they're going to happen again. It's just a question of when. It's unfortunate this summer's been crazy and so forth, but you know, we have to prepare each and every individual's home, and including our own, we need to be aware of all of the opportunities that you know, to protect our property. And the municipality has you just alluded. I was, unfortunately, I was about 29 million short, and so 80 million just shy of, you know, by 2028. And I didn't see the additional 15 million on Lakewood Park, which Lakewood Park, is beautiful asset as it is, it also is part of that flood mitigation. Without that park, we wouldn't have that deep reservoir for sanitary, and we certainly wouldn't have the channel you know, in place. So it's playing a role in terms of protecting and safeguarding our municipality. And heaven forbid, the timing couldn't have been better. I mean, although one flooded basement is one too many, but you can imagine if the Brighton Road pumping station and the Manning Road pumping station wouldn't have been put into and commission at the time just prior to 2016. This tells a tale, you know, in itself. So thank you very much, Mr. Bartnick, for I think a very timely report. So certainly the contributors to it, I know yourself and Kirby and John, and plus the whole public works crew and our water division have done a phenomenal job. And I think this is something that needs to be pushed out into our constituents so that they can see that we are serious of doing what we can to protect the, you know, the well-being interests of our municipality. And you know, that's a substantive amount of money for a small community in a short period of time. So with that, I'm gonna, you know, certainly those are my comments, but I'd certainly open it up to the rest of council. I'm sure they've got certainly some comments and questions that they would like to certainly bring forward. Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Phil, for a very comprehensive report on what we experienced in the last couple of weeks. You know, you've addressed a lot of the concerns that people have brought forward, and I think, you know, just some of them just aren't going to get reconciled if we're not prepared to have water on the road. It is an essential part of the system. I guess we need to keep on reminding residents of that it is a key. We don't want the whole system to get overcharged so that the pumps stop working. We want the flow to keep on happening. So I noticed a couple of things with your the graph that you showed for the stormwater, or the sanitary rather. It did look to me like there was a lot of stormwater getting in to the sanitary sewer, and I know we've reported some reductions in recent years, but I wonder if and I'm thinking a family member recently got a quote for a storm connection, and the contractor proposed to attach it to the sanitary sewer. So alarm bells went off for me. Like, why on earth would they be doing this? And are there contractors out there who are not getting permits and attaching storm connections to the sanitary sewer? And is there a mechanism for us to track those down when they happen? Because it did look like a substantial amount of stormwater was going in. However, granted, I don't recall what previous years were. I'm wondering if you could elaborate on that part of it, especially, I mean, the I&I in general, but what's left to do to reduce, and are there things that we could be adding to our toolbox to help bring that stormwater infiltration down in this sanitary system?
Through your worship, thank you, Councillor Dowie. Unfortunately, we do come across a lot of cross connections and contractors that are tying stormwater into the sanitary, whether it be more recently or historically. We do have, as part of the flood mitigation strategy, we did lie out some strategies for mandatory foundation drain disconnection. It's definitely a little bit challenging when you are going on to private property to make that disconnection. The one thing I would state is, we're currently working on a sanitary sewer model update. And it's been a number of years now, and it's just trying to, collect the rainfall data, collect the sewer monitoring program. And as part of that program, we've directed the consultant to look at all options. Is it just strictly a capital initiative on the public side? Are there advantages to disconnecting foundation drains at a certain cost? What is the best cost solution here moving forward? And so they're continuing to work on that study. And I think one of the things that was interesting to me is if you look on, I think it's on slide 13, the cluster of some of these basements that flooded by surcharging. So those are the ones I usually kind of hone in on. There are 2 or 3 clusters, and they are in the vicinities of the areas that are coming up on the draft model. Oh, thanks, Dave. Yep. So there are some areas here. I think Green Valley is one of them. Lanoux and Heather Glen is another. So there are clusters of these basements flooding by surcharge. And these are areas that are popping up on the sanitary model, the draft model that we have. So it's a good validation that the modeling is correct. And it's good validation that the recommendations that are going to be brought forward and the work that would ultimately be completed are going to address those issues in those problem areas. We still don't know exactly if it's, like I said before, if it's solely on the public side or if it's a combination of public and private. But those are different scenarios in the modeling that we have asked the consultant to review. We did have a model completed, I think, in 2011. We are updating it with a newer software program. I think it's called InfoWorks, a similar type program that the city used for their sewer master plan. And it gives you greater flexibility, I think, when trying to identify some of the I&I problems on the private side. And one of the big issues is contending with not only the cross connections, but the foundation drains that are tied directly into the sanitary. So I think what we're finding is that homes that were built prior to 1985 were not required to put in a storm sump pump. So there is a very high likelihood that those properties have a direct connection from their foundation drain into the sanitary, and they're contributing to the surcharge in the system. So I hope that answers your question. And
Supplementary. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Worship. In part, Phil, it does. I guess I got maybe a follow-up question and two others, if I can throw them all into one. Is there a way to identify, where there's a cross connection by looking at camera footage, so that, or smoke testing or something like that, where we can actually identify these during the calm of the storm, so we just in between rain events, so we can work out something with the different homeowners and identify, hey, unfortunately you're contributing to the problem by having the wrong connection hooked up. And kind of two follow-ups. One, if ditches are not flowing, could you elaborate on the cause of that during a rain event? And second, if you have given the storm drainage master plan, what kind of time frame we might be looking at for full implementation in terms of say the current funding trajectory? Is that a 25-year plan, 30-year plan, 50-year plan? Hoping to, if you might shed some light on that.
okay, through your worship, thank you, Councillor Dowie. In response to sewer camera work, so as part of the 2018 and 19 sanitary sewer rehabilitation project, we did flush and video inspect all of the sanitary sewers, essentially from County Road 42 to the north. And as part of that, we did identify I&I issues on the public side, but we also flagged some of these private connections that had clear continuous running water, which is an indication of perhaps some inflow getting in through a crack in the pipe, or foundation drains that are directly connected. So I think the intent was to take that information and use that as part of the sanitary modeling exercise that we're doing and see how that lines up with the assumption of these homes pre-1985 that would have that direct connection. Causes of drains not flowing. So we did have a number of calls, especially on the East Town Line drain along Manning, where it didn't appear to be flowing. I assure you and all the residents that the pumps were running continuously. And I think what happens is on the surface, the water does look like it is moving very slowly, but underneath is where you'll see some of the faster velocities where the pump is kind of sucking the water out of the bottom of that drain. We did receive calls about drains not moving, I think south of County Road 22, I think heading into the city of Windsor, right? So the Gwen drain, LaChance drain, I think the Banwell drain as well. Those are all gravity outlets. And these drains are designed again to the 1 and 2 year storm event. So although they may appear that they're not moving, it's just the vast amount of volume that fell during that period. So the drains are operating as designed. It's just it cannot handle that volume of water. So with respect to the storm master plan, so we did complete the master plan in 2019. It had about $107 million in recommended solutions and upgrades. Between the DMAF projects, which is the Scully, St. Mark's, and PJ Cecile pump stations, the Tecumseh Road storm sewer that was recent, I guess earlier this year was approved, as well as the Manning Road Phase 2 project. So all those those projects are recommendations in the master plan, and I think they total closer to about 30 or 34 million. So within 5 or 6 year period, we'll have a good chunk of that 107 million spent and in the ground. As far as funding, when we did complete the master plan, I think there was questions from council about, okay, well, how are we going to fund the infrastructure? So we are undertaking a study on the implementation of a storm water rate, so similar to water rates and sanitary rates. And I think Finance and Public Works has been working closely, and we hope to have a report to council later this year with a recommendation. But essentially that would look to try and fund some of these projects moving into the future. As far as timelines, I would probably estimate that this might be at least a 20-year implementation strategy. I think it's all dependent on funding, whether the stormwater rates would be implemented or not, availability of grant funding as well. So I think what we've seen recently with some of the grants, that a lot of these projects are being accelerated, especially for those 3 pump stations, the Scully St. Mark's and PJ Cecile at the closer to the $27 million price tag.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Jobin and Councillor Alton follow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Mr. Bartnick. Thank you as well, Phil, for all of the information that you provided. I will most likely be using sections to certain residents who reach out, because some of them have different experiences. Some they are on a septic system and it is just an internal, and then some have a stormwater retention pond and they have concerns and confusion between, there's 3 different parties basically, and they don't understand what's going on at the different parties. And then they have their own internal problems that they're just not even aware of until they become flooded. And we know that the town has worked through this over the years and have given information, and we've had open houses. We've gone door to door in the lower laying flooded prone areas and provided tools and direction and help and information. Your information referenced primarily the July 16th storm, but just come this past weekend, we had some other flooding again in the 42 corridor and in Old Castle again. And it did primarily come down to private property matters within their own homes. So I'm still kind of surprised that people aren't really taking action. And it's almost like, well, I didn't really get flooded the last time really bad, so it's probably not going to hit me. And there's a lot of language, and there's a lot to understand between the 3 parties: stormwater, storm sewer, septic, backwater valve, all of it, backup pump, backup battery. People confuse all the terms. I really am hoping to see that maybe we could come up with our own live video, you guys and your team, showing, hey, here we are today at the stormwater retention pond. This is what it's supposed to do. If it's doing this, this is when you should call and be concerned. This is what your backup battery looks like, your backup valve. This is what your eaves trough should look like. I feel like specific, clear, simplified language with a visual end of, and that way they can't confuse and feel like they were misled, and then, or they talk to somebody on the other end of town and they say, oh no, I did that. I was shocked to learn that people were pumping in-ground pools out. Okay, our grounds were already like 7 days saturated of rain. And we've also, as human beings, developed a cement world. And so you have an in-ground pool surrounded by concrete with your concrete driveway, and this rain is pouring down on already saturated ground. It's really got nowhere else to go. And then you're backwashing your pool. You're actually compromising the integrity of the strength of your pool and compromising its integrity. Just leave it be, let it all go. Like, just chill a minute. What you should be doing is checking your sump pumps, checking your eaves troughs that they're connected properly. And I just feel like it comes down to more of that communication, because we are spending the dollars, we are providing the information, but maybe not in the right way. I don't know if that makes sense. And your crew is great. I call, they go out, they take photos, they assessed. Kirby in the last couple of days have been to 4 houses from people who have called me. And again, if you don't call your elected official or your municipality, they don't know where the issue lies and they don't know how to help you. So complaining to somebody else at the coffee shop is really not an effective way of fixing a problem. So I guess maybe I have more statements than I did a question, except for maybe even direction on providing some form of a video.
Go ahead, Mr. Bartnick.
Thank you, through your worship, and thank you, Councillor Jobin. The video, that's definitely something we can look into. I do believe the City of Windsor has done some kind of informational videos as well, and kind of like the DIYs of how backwaters are installed, backwater valves are installed, or some pump is installed, and for their purpose. So we'll see what's out there and what we can utilize, I think, from our neighbors, and then if not, we can try and supplement with our own staff and perhaps some videos and some how-to videos. It is educating the public is definitely very challenging, right? There's a lot of different plumbers out there have a lot of different recommendations, some good, some not so good. And, our staff is here to try to assist. I can't thank our staff enough, as well as the IT staff and the customer service reps at the front as well, for all the hard work that they did, receiving all the calls and logging the calls. And so we do take pride in trying to, try to respond very quickly. I personally have had the unfortunate experience of flooding numerous times as well. So, when we do speak to people, I preface it by saying it's not if you're going to flood, it's when you're going to flood with the basement, right? So you have to keep up with the maintenance. You have to ensure that, your backwater valve is cleaned. You have to ensure your sump pump is cleaned, that you have a battery backup or a water backup to those. So it's constant maintenance, and, that's what we try to relay to the residents as well.
No, for sure. And I appreciate that. And so you're okay with me sharing some of those, well, it's public information anyways, your report. So just here and there, because even some people are saying we haven't invested anything. So that breakdown on one slide is fantastic to just say, oh yeah, actually, here you go. And anyway, I like things accessible and quick to just send. So, okay, well, thank you for that.
Yeah, the time to make the call is not when the rain is coming down. It's when the sun is shining. And,
Yes.
and that's where you should be, folks should be doing. And I think, Phil, you did show it after, I know that 2011 to 2016, we had 8 people take advantage of the backflow preventer and 0 on the disconnection. After 16, it jumped to 400 and some. Well, they flooded. So, and then in 17, another big jump. And then from 18, 19, 20, the numbers dropped dramatically. And now they're back up again. So that's the part. And you're right, Councilor Jobin, the communication piece, I think it's almost like every spring or, between the seasons, just to kind of remind folks, oh, summer's coming. And or if you get a lot of snow and then the snow melt, that's another issue. And then the other one is lake levels. So we kind of hit them all since 16 and so forth. But it's the maintenance piece. I know people have had a sump pump for 15 years in a sump. And they didn't, probably you had to show them where it was. It just, and then it fails and so forth. So I think it's very, very important. But the video piece, I think, is ideal, and it's kind of shows a responsibility to everyone. We all have a responsibility. The town can't do everything. We can't, and even if we spend another 107 million, that doesn't guarantee your basement's not going to flood.
Right.
So
I completely agree with you. And when you said earlier, like, one flooded basement is one too many. I cringe when it's rained too long, not for myself, but for other people. I get my truck and I go look at the municipal drains, make sure it's flowing. And then I almost feel like, well, that's flowing real good. Oh gosh, let's hope the pumps down there are working, keep it up. So yeah, I definitely am concerned, and I don't like seeing people go through hardships. And I will often even offer, I'll send a kid over to help you. I can't right now, but I'll send a kid over, or what do you need, anyways. But so we do care and we are working hard, and it is important to us. Thank you.
Yes. Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship, and through you. First off, to town administration, again, my thanks. I'll echo my colleagues' appreciation, and as well as some of their words about education and informing people. And again, I'll agree 100% with what the mayor said. We have to be extremely proactive in maintenance, looking at all of the systems, whether they backflow preventers, sump pumps. People have to recognize a 5-minute inspection can be worth, trigger or identify a problem that can save them tens of thousands of dollars. So I cannot emphasize it enough. Personally, myself, on a daily basis, I go check my sumps. On a monthly basis, I check my backflow preventer. And perhaps that's a bit overkill, but nonetheless, I really would highly recommend that residents inform themselves and be proactive. When it's raining, it's too late to be looking at these things. It has to be done, like was indicated, when the sun is shining. On some of the suggestions you made, Phil, a few comments here on that. I think that's great. I would also perhaps encourage you to consider implementing the suggestion of having people have a backup sump pump. If you look at slide 13, I kind of took more of a focus on that Ward 2 area. There's a lot of dots, unfortunately, and the majority of them are associated with sump pump failures as well as the floor drains. So having a backup sump pump ready to go can mean probably in about a period of 15 minutes, you can swap out a sump pump. So, if you're ready and you need to, it can be done fast. And you don't necessarily need to be a master plumber to do that. It's easy as, pulling one out and pulling another one in, putting another one in. They also have, I think for 5, 10, 15, 20 bucks, those floor drain stoppers, which, are effectively corks that you put into a floor drain, plug it up, screw it in. If you're worried, put it in during a heavy rainfall event. Of course, that will stop the flow at those floor drains. If you have a toilet or something else, you could certainly get in there. But I think a good suggestion, a $10, $20 suggestion or a device, it can really actually make quite a bit of difference if you only have that single floor drain. I also want to comment, and I was able to circle around, the Ward 2 area just after the rainfall stopped. I do, again, really want to appreciate the efforts of town staff. They made sure that gate kind of at the intersection of Manning and Riverside Drive was cleared. Twice, unannounced, I showed up and it was clear, it was flowing quite well. So I appreciate that there was people, town staff monitoring that. I will indicate, though, that at this weekend's rainfall event, sadly, what happened was there was some blockages associated with some of the, I'll call it roadside hardware that came along with the Manning road improvements that are being made. I know there was, those glorified pylons. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact name to call them. Some of them were unfortunately underwater blocking. They were removed quite promptly, and I appreciate that. But as a suggestion, maybe not a bad idea to have either the contractor do, I don't want to say a daily inspection, but certainly if we know we're going to have a rainfall event, a forecast is indicating significant rainfall, if they could have a person look at the drain and make sure that there is no roadside hardware, safety hardware in the drain or in the ditch. The other comment, which was really frustrating because I experienced it on St. Gregory's, the road was closed, but sadly there were many patrons still using the road. And I'll be honest with you, I saw a few trucks that were pulling up some waves that would probably give some surfers a lot of excitement. But it was terrible to see because those waves were significantly impeding upon the residents' property, to the point where some of them were almost coming to their front door. So I guess I would encourage, I don't know, certainly town staff, they said, look, we tried, but people are just moving them and still driving down these closed roads. Perhaps additional pylons or other roadside hardware to ensure that people do not use those roads that are closed would be appropriate. But I hope those people that are watching will respect that signage and recognize that those roads are closed for a reason. And if you drive down those roads, you may be causing or a potential, contributing to some of the flooding that people are experiencing. Finally, one other comment, Phil, and it was, you had an image of St. Mark's. I've looked at St. Mark's over the years, and it's quite evident to me that the ditches are quite compromised. I don't know if it's a combination of what the residents have wanted or it's just lack of maintenance, but I think it would be worthwhile. I know there's a little bit of inspection that's occurring on Edgewater, but I think also on St. Mark's would be warranted as well, because the ditches become, as you know, a bit of a reservoir for that water that falls. But a lot of those ditches, I hate to say it, have been filled in, and some of the culverts that are into the ditches, I'm willing to bet if you're lucky, you've got 30% area available to the water. The remainder is covered up by earth. So it's basically a real bad use or a terrible use of the ditches that are there for the purpose of kind of holding and moving water. So I would suggest maybe a little bit of an inspection and consideration towards improving those ditches to benefit, because I did receive, once the rainfall started coming significantly, a number of calls from residents on St. Mark's. But I really do want to articulate, thanks and appreciation, because I think everyone was working hard. It was evident to me. And again, I'll really emphasize that point of being proactive and inspecting, on the private property, as well as on the public property, inspecting and maintaining the appropriate infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Altenhoff. Councillor Houston.
Thank you through your worship. I don't have a whole lot to add, because I think everybody's kind of covered most of it today. I certainly want to pass my appreciation along to Phil and all your staff in the last two rain events. I was on the phone with Mr. Bartnick. I had residents calling me regarding concerns with drains, flow, etc. And I just want to pass my appreciation along to the entire Public Works team, who is out and dealing, with the issues at the times that they are happening. Mayor and Councillor Jobin, I think you said it right, where it's not only us on the private side, but it's the public side, but it's the private side where, this is a partnership, and we need to ensure as homeowners that our homes are up to date and operating just as much as the town and the town's infrastructure. We need to ensure that what's in the ground is operating, to the way that it's been designed. And, over the years in conversations with residents, it's the 1 in 50, it's the 1 in 100 storm. And, one thing I've realized as of late, the number one response I get back is, well, it's not 1 in 100 because we just had one last week, right? And, I've learned now not saying it's a 1 in 100 year storm. The drain is only designed to carry 50 mils in 6 hours. And when we get 80 or 90 in an hour and a half, the drain can't handle it, right? The road is designed to hold the water. So, one sump pump isn't enough. You're going to need two. You're going to need to get, access to pump it out on the driveway, pump it out on the lawn, just because of the intensity of the storms that we have. So the one question I did want to ask, to Phil is, just given the more frequent and intense rainstorms that we're seeing, should we be increasing the maintenance schedules on all of the drains that we do have current assessment schedules on, and then those moving forward. All of the, even though we have, curb and gutter and storm sewers in Ward 4, we all outlet into a municipal drain, right? And we've got some of them which, those reports haven't come back with. Some of those, like the East Town line, what was recently renewed. So, I'm just wondering, and I don't know exactly what our schedule is, but should we be increasing those maintenance schedules given the intensity and the amount of rain that we're receiving?
Through your worship, thank you, Councillor Houston. So the town has undertaken a lot of work on municipal drains. I believe since 2014, when we had a kind of a sole position for the drainage superintendent. And since then, that little division has grown with the assistant drainage superintendent as well. And I think in the presentation, it is listed where, the town has undertaken about 6 million over the last number of years on drain repairs and drain maintenance. Still a lot of work left to do on the drains, absolutely. There's, when it comes to kind of a regular maintenance program on the drains, I think we have been playing a little bit of catch up over the years. But we do keep an eye on some of the recent drains. So we look at, is there a brushing exercise that we have to do? Is there phragmites that are kind of holding up some of the stormwater that requires, cutting every year for a certain number of years? I think moving forward, we are looking at, trying to treat the drains a little bit more like a kind of a capital project, where I think typically what you'll see is if we clean the drain out in year 1, we'll be back in year 5 for brushing, maybe back in year 10 for a bottom dip. And as we kind of track the activities on each drain, because each drain is a little bit different, right? The slopes, side slopes are different. The grade is different. Some might accumulate sediment a little bit quicker than others. We'll have a better handle on each of the drains and how they function and when some of these key maintenance action items should be performed, right? So maybe we start by saying, okay, let's try to do it every 10 years. It might be, every 7 years for a bottom dip. So I think the work that's done to date, we're trying to clean up some of, some of the worst offenders on the drains that, that hasn't seen work in quite a while. So still lots of work left to do, but I think we've been putting a big dent into our municipal drainage program. The other thing to recognize as well, and I think I mentioned it earlier, that these drains are typically designed for the 1 and 2 or the 1 and 5 year event, right? So in some of these larger storm events, you'll still see flooding. You'll see overtopping of the banks, whether it's flooding of the road or flooding the adjacent agricultural field. So that would be typical in some of these larger events.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
And thank you, Your Honor. Phil, would you be able to email us the presentation as a separate file so that we can have it on our record? I know you're going to post it on the social media there for the town that we can share, but I'd just like to have it on a separate email. Again, thank you for the detailed report, and I'm prepared to move to receive the report at the appropriate time.
Yeah, I certainly will. I don't know if there's any further comments. I think we've kind of all weighed in. I think the end result on the drainage piece, the only thing that came to mind for me, Phil, as well, is that obviously the more you clear, the more water you bring to the East Town Line drain and more of it heads north. But having said that, the setback on a lot of the fields, I mean, a lot of them, I know some municipalities and some conservation authorities, they do have setbacks in terms of how far you can go. And then they usually try to get, grass or vegetation to stop the migration from topsoil going into, especially in, you know, after harvest, but certainly in the spring. Do we, I don't believe we have, and I stand to be corrected, but I don't believe we have any type of bylaw here setback.
No, not a specific bylaw. So when these buffer strips have been identified by OMAFRA as best management practice, and we have been trying to implement them on the municipal drains. However, we can only do so through new bylaws through Section 78 reports. So some of the older reports that are still valid and some of the bylaws that are still valid that allow us to do maintenance doesn't give us the authority to establish that buffer zone. But definitely the newer reports, the Section 78, where the engineer comes in and creates a report to council, we have been implementing those. So as we do more of those, you'll start to see more buffers along the municipal drains.
So maybe to just add to that, you know, in terms of our educational piece too, is that that wouldn't be a bad idea also to, you know, to include that. Okay, Deputy Mayor, you're prepared to move the receipt of the report, and do I have support? Councillor Houston? All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Bartnick, and certainly extend our thanks to your staff, and this is very, very timely, and certainly I'm looking forward to receiving it as well, and it's a wealth of information, and it to be shared with certainly our residents. All right, members of council, we've got communication. We've got 16 pieces of communication. If I could have a motion to receive said communication. Moved by Councillor Dowie, supported Councillor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Any communication pieces? I know we have none for action, but anything that council would like to bring forward? Deputy Mayor and Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to move support for item number 2 and number 12. Item 2 is the City of Kitchener regarding the cost of building materials. It's asking the upper levels of government to see if they can review or offer any impact strategies to contain those costs. As you're going to see in tonight's agenda, the pickleball courts are over tender from what we estimated due to the extra cost of building materials. So I'd like to see support for 2, and then also item 12 from the town of LaSalle regarding capital gains tax on primary residence. We want to make sure that we're loud and vocal in terms of not allowing the federal government to impose any of that on the primary residence of our homeowners. Okay.
I think on 12, I think we've already supported the Fort Erie on that.
Yes, I know, but it's LaSalle, so they're one of our county municipalities. I thought I'd support again.
Okay.
I don't know if it's the same thing.
Okay, not a problem. I do agree with it. Don't get me wrong. I fully agree on that. Okay, so do I have support on 2 and 12? Yes, Councilor Jobin, thank you. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. All right, committee minutes. We have the Town Tecumseh DIA Special Committee minutes of June 24th. Can I have a motion to accept?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I think Councillor Dowie had an item on.
Oh, sorry. Yes, you're right. Councillor Dowie.
Yeah,
I apologize.
Oh, not a problem. Thank you, Worship. Actually, I just wanted to highlight item 10, which is for our friends at Enbridge Gas. This is I guess the second year of a fairly hefty increase. And you know what, I guess I know they're undertaking initiatives to expand natural gas delivery to underserviced areas. Perhaps that's what's driving the cost, but we repeatedly see that for the kind of the existing Enbridge service area, their increases are less than in the Union Gas service area. And I'm wondering if our partners at AMO or another organization we're part of may be aware as to why Enbridge Gas is looking for these kinds of increases year to year, especially since their purchase of Union Gas.
Yeah, normally, it's a very good, I will certainly bring it up, certainly to the association and that, but the point that you bring in terms of the disparity between the various regions in the province, you know, for years, especially the gas utilities, well, competition has gone by the wayside now, right? And that's one thing. But the other point, it was always harmonized across the utility. You know, whether they were putting a new pipeline here or pipelines in other areas and so forth. Those infrastructures were always harmonized, similar to Ontario Hydro, but it seems that even Ontario Hydro now are wanting to change their harmonization. And so I don't know if this is the utilities now or the big utilities that are now wanting to maximize whatever investments that are being made to upgrade their infrastructure in the area. But I think this is a very good point. And that's quite a jump from $7 to I think 12 on one side. So yeah, maybe we should maybe I don't want to be an intervener. That's big work. That's a lot of work in that, but there's no reason why we can't send a letter and basically on that. But in the meantime, Councillor Dowie, I will make a phone call to the association and just to see if they're getting any type of feedback from the rest of the other municipalities.
Thank you. It just seems odd with the consolidation and the reduction of the headcount in Chatham-Kent that you think costs would go down, and instead they're going up.
So then you're prepared. Okay, so you're okay with that? Prepare a letter and then send to the OEB, and then I'll get some information from AMO, and I'll share that with our CAO and that, and we'll make sure that it's distributed to council.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay, we'll go back to committee minutes. BIA, motion to accept. Councillor Houston and Councillor Jobin. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to maybe make council aware, and it'll likely trickle through, but we've had some challenges with quorum in the last couple of meetings with the BIA. And part of that, I mean, a lot of it's unavoidable, but there is a vacancy now at the BIA. And certainly filling that vacancy is of high interest. At least there's a belief that this might help to address the quorum issue, but it is certainly slowing down the business of the BIA. And so I'm hopeful that that this vacancy might be able to be filled as quickly as possible by council. So the first moment that we can take action, certainly I think the association would appreciate it. I'd also like to mention on that they wish to have an interest in, they have an interest in being part of the selection process, which I'm not too clear as to that dividing line. As I understand it, council makes the appointment, and council has access to the in-camera information of the applications. So really for just for our awareness internally, I expect that request to come forward.
Yeah, I would suggest that, Councillor Dowie, that comes through the clerk's office and maybe send out a request for membership. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree. We need to make sure that we continue past practice. If there's ever a vacancy during a term of council, it's very clear, and I'm sure the clerk can support the fact that council appoints the vacancy. So again, if it comes through an advertisement to request residents to come, it has to be consistent where those applications do come to the town. And again, if there's any individual that the BIA would like to encourage, leave it up to them to call them up and kind of encourage them to put in an application. And I think that would be the proper manner to take it. In the meantime, to help with the quorum, I know in the past we had Councillor Altenhoff on the Committee of Adjustment. We've been going back and forth the fact that there's a quorum issue. Perhaps a quick fix would be adding yourself and Councillor Houston back as a voting member until those vacancies are filled for the quorum. And again, that would address the quorum issue because I know both of you do attend those meetings. And so if under new business, I'd be prepared to appoint one or both of you on until that vacancy is filled. Just a suggestion to help out continue with the business because there's a lot of business to be done. And a lot of exciting things happening in town that we'd want the BIA to be partners moving forward and be able to move the business and agenda along.
Yes, Madam Clerk.
And if I may, in accordance with our vacancy policy, we will be calling for applications in September to fill any board vacancies for the following year of the term of council. So those nominations will be called with a due date at the end of October, with council considering the appointments at their last meeting in November, special meeting.
Well, then, there's a time span. There's a merit, I think, in Deputy Mayor Bichetti, that we appoint somebody from council or another vote just to carry to make sure that they got quorum to be able to deal with the business at hand. I really don't see anything out of the ordinary until we get applicants. So because we're in July and we're talking November, and so there's some time frame. So I'm going to look at both the councils that the voting member and the alternate on if they're willing to, especially the alternate willing to sit, voting member, then I'll leave it to the rest of the council. Certainly bring a motion forward. Councillor Houston.
Through you, Your Worship, just a question. I feel like I should maybe know the answer, but is it possible to put either Councillor Dowie or myself as a voting member, one or the other, or is it only like that one individual, right? So it'd be myself or Councillor Dowie, not either or. And the only reason I ask that is I may have a conflict next meeting, and for the BIA, and then I believe Councillor Dowie's got a conflict in September. We could always move the meeting, but that's and I've got no issue, going back on as a voting member, but just a thought.
Councillor Jobin, Councillor Altenhoff.
So when is the next current meeting? Because then I could suggest if you don't get any applicants till September, maybe we make that decision in September. But in the interim, put the notice of applicants or new members in and then revisit it come September. And
I think that's what we're trying to, I think this is what the clerk is alluding to, Councillor Jobin. But in the meantime, so that we can carry quorum on that particular committee, it's important to have,
oh, I'm sorry. I thought there was no meeting from now till September, but there is one coming up soon. My apologies.
No, that's quite all right. Councillor Altenhoff, I think you had your hand up.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to the clerk. Going off what the mayor said as well as Councillor Houston, could it be that either Councillor Houston or Councillor Dowie, I should say, and or could be voting members? So if both of them are there, they could vote. If one of them is there, either can vote. So use the term and/or, that would facilitate kind of both options.
Well, I don't see any problem. We have that at county council. We have a proxy vote. So, yes, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
So if I may, we currently don't have proxy voting or alternate members provided for in a procedural bylaw, but that's certainly something we can look to including in a procedural bylaw. And what I would suggest at this point, if the BIA is struggling with quorum, the council may want to appoint both councillors Houston and Dowie to the board on an interim basis until any vacancies can be filled in November at the special meeting of council.
Why did you make it so simple? So there's your answer. Appoint them both, and at least you'll have somewhat of a quorum, and one can't make it for one meeting, the other one can, and so spell yourself off. And in the meantime, we'll certainly advertise, and then that'll take us to November. So Deputy Mayor, prepared to move that? Okay, do I support Councillor Altenhoff? Yes. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Okay, that problem solved. Order revision, South Talbot Drain, a motion to approve. Councillor Altenhoff. And support Councillor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Policies and Priorities Committee meeting, July 13th. A motion to approve. Councillor Jobin, Councillor Houston, comments, questions? All in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Move on to reports. I'd like to call upon our Director of Corporate Services, our clerk, to summarize the reports and recommendation, and that's the council conferences for 2022.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we have before you our annual report on the conferences that council has historically attended. We look to confirming these attendances in the next following council year, which being the 2022 calendar year. This will assist us as we move forward on the reports on this evening's agenda in developing the council meeting calendar, as typically some of these conferences do conflict with regular meetings of council. So we are once again providing you with the dates for the conferences in 2020 that are regularly attended and listed as you're seeing on the screen here. And in accordance with our policy, approval by council by way of motion is required to authorize attendance at these conferences. From time to time, there will be other workshops or conferences that may come up through the calendar year, and we'll be sure to place those on a regular council agenda in order that the members can give consideration to authorizing attendance to those conferences or meetings at that time. So we're asking for a motion of council to authorize attending the conferences that are listed as shown on the screen here for 2020 in accordance with the town's travel policy and professional development policy.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering where small urban and rural was, but I guess at the backside.
Oh,
Okay.
my apologies.
No, that's okay. I was just going to ask the question. You would have said, no, it's on the back page. That's okay. Okay. Council, move by Councillor Houston, supported Councillor Altenhoff on the schedule of 2022 conferences. Any questions or comments? Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. Just a comment. You know what? I've really felt in the last year and a half the pinch of not having the networking opportunity of attending some of these conferences, I guess residents don't really see who's there, and whether it's dealing with Canada Post or Enbridge, CP Rail, CN, having the ability to discuss residents' issues directly with people who can help to resolve them makes a world of difference and helps to get things unblocked. So it's been tough in a virtual format to really foster that network. I do believe, just from my experience in getting issues resolved, that these are worthwhile conferences to attend, and especially for getting residents' concerns addressed. So it's really happy to support this.
All right, thank you, Councilor Dowie. Any further questions or comments on the report? All in favor? Opposed, if any of that is carried. Thank you. Madam Clerk, 2021-19, that's the December holiday schedule for 2022.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So again, this is one of our annual reports that we present to Council. In accordance with our collective agreements, if we are going to be quote unquote shutting down the town hall over the holidays, we do need to have a resolution of Council to authorize that shutdown. The terms of the collective agreement state when certain holidays will be recognized when they fall on a Saturday or Sunday. So typically if a holiday falls on a Friday, or a Saturday rather, it'll be recognized on the Friday, and if it falls on the Sunday, it will be recognized on the Monday. We have conferenced with the QP local representatives as it relates to 2022 calendar. And rather than have the holidays that fall on the Saturday recognized on the previous Friday, as it relates to the Christmas Eve, we're recommending that that holiday be recognized on the next following Tuesday. And similarly, that the New Year's holiday that falls on a Sunday be recognized on the previous or the earlier Thursday, thus allowing staff to be able to enjoy their holidays without having to take any paid vacation or sick or lieu time for the full week. It would allow the holidays, the office to be closed from the Saturday, the 24th, through to including the Sunday. So those staff that may wish to take some extra time around the holidays obviously would be able to do so, subject to their department head or manager's authorization and approval. In the past, it has been the practice to shut the town hall during that week. There is opportunities for residents if they need to make payments or avail themselves to certain services. We have a number of those services that are now available online, and we also have the mail drop box at the town hall. So we're respectfully asking for Council's consent or approval once again to close the town hall from Saturday, December 24th through 2022 through to and including Sunday, January 1st, 2023.
Okay. Move. Deputy Mayor Bichetti, Councilor Jobin, support. Questions or comments? None. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, 2022 council meetings. That's under also the clerk's office, 2021-20.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report is to assist in developing the 2022 meeting calendar. In accordance with our notice bylaw, we do have to post the meeting dates, and we do so by way of notices at council meetings, as well as posting the calendar on our municipal website. So again, we take a look at the calendar. We take a look at a number of different factors, commitments of council, events, holidays during the year, and provide council with some suggested dates that could be canceled as it relates or conflicts with some of those events and holidays and other matters. So typically in the summer, council reduces the number of meetings by 2. The first meeting being canceled is typically the first meeting, which is the second Tuesday in the week of June, as it relates to conflict with municipal conferences. The second meeting in August, or the fourth Tuesday in August, is typically canceled as it relates to events that are ongoing around that time on an annual basis. This coming year is also a municipal election year. So we're suggesting that the October 25th meeting date be canceled, as it falls immediately following the municipal election date. And maybe selfishly as the clerk, I'm going to be having to confirm the votes and tally of the votes on the 25th. So we're respectfully asking for that date to be canceled in order to allow us to be conducting elections during and around that time. And then lastly, we have the last meeting in December, which falls shortly after the Christmas holidays and the time when the town hall, as approved by council just now, to be closed. We do post these closures on the town's website and issue news releases to make the public aware of when these changes occur. This will also assist us in developing the Essex Windsor Solid Waste collection calendar for next year. And that publication process generally starts in the September prior to the year. So we're respectfully asking for council's approval to cancel the Tuesday, June 14th, August 23rd, October 25th, and December 27th in 2002 for council meeting nights.
All right, council's pleasure. Move, Councilor Houston, support. Support Councilor Jobin. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. All right, move on to our clerks department as well, 2021 management, non-union administrative support staff and council economic salary adjustment for 2021.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report is presented to you in accordance with the compensation and salary administration policy. In accordance with that policy, there are 2 components, one being an annual economic adjustment, and this report is presented to you in respect of that annual adjustment. When considering the adjustment, there's a number of different factors that are to be considered, and that those include the annual economic adjustment based on the consumer price index, the OMERS annual increase, our municipal comparator, percentage increases, an average median, and the negotiated increases with the local bargaining units, as well as compression and ability to pay. So we do have a salary grid that was established in 2015 for the non-union management group. And that salary grid is annually adjusted by an approved adjustment by council. And we have done our research to provide council with the information on the factors that are to be considered when presenting council with adjustments to be considered. So within the report, we've provided you with the consumer price index increase for 2020, as well as the OMERS increase for 2021. We have provided you with the rate increases that were recently negotiated for QP Locals 702.1, 702.2, as well as 702.5. Their adjustment for 2015 was approved at 1.5 in addition to benefit improvements and 2% in each of the following years. We have collective agreements this year that are current for both the outside as well as the Fire Association, and the economic adjustment for those groups is 2%. And comparing and viewing the increases or the economic adjustments for our comparator municipalities, there's approximately 10 of those. The increases range from 0.7 to 2%, with 6 of those 9 comparators, being between 1.75 and a 2% increase. So considering these above factors and that there are no benefit improvements proposed for 2021 for the non-union management group, it is being recommended that an increase of 2% be approved to the salary grid, retroactive to 2021. coinciding with the non-management economic adjustment. The bylaw that establishes the salary for council also indicates that the adjustments shall be aligned for council with the non-management increase, and that the economic adjustment for the mayor be at 100%, 50% for the councillors, and 25% for the deputy mayor. So we are respectfully asking for this report to be received, that the adjustment of 2% be approved to the non-union salary grid for January 21st, 2021, and that council's adjustments also be approved in relation to the non-union economic adjustment.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Council on the report. Council Houston. Move. Support. Council Jobin. Questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Again, Madam Clerk, you have a report, CS 2021-22 and CS 2021-16, request for noise bylaw exemption by Tabuli by Eddie's.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we have before you a report for a request for an exemption from the town's noise bylaw 2002-07 from the owners of the Tabuli restaurant located at 1614 Les Bronx Road. This request is actually for Saturdays during the months of July, August, and September between 9:30 and 12 o'clock a.m. There are a number of businesses in that plaza, restaurants, that have been trying to attract patrons on their patios by providing musical entertainment. And we have at least 2 residents in the area that have regularly filed complaints with the OPP in respect of these entertainments. The OPP have attended the events and have addressed the matters with the complainants as well as with the owners of the restaurants. And in order to provide, I guess, the OPP with some assistance with enforcing the noise bylaw and to find ways to, while allowing the business owners to provide some entertainment during reasonable business hours that are posted on their websites. We are asking that the Tabulis who have currently asked for an exemption be granted the exemption between 9:30 as requested, but only to 11 p.m., which is consistent with their posted business hours. And after which those 11 p.m. is generally when those complaints are being received. And we're also asking that, given that there are no meetings in council, and rather than providing a report to council each time such a request comes forward, that authorization be granted to the clerk to grant exceptions to the noise bylaw no later than 11 p.m. Additionally to that, of course, we'll be notifying the OPP of any of the exemptions and that ask that they monitor the events for concerns. And we're also asking that the businesses so approved for exemptions also ensure that the residents in the area are notified of their exemption. Those are the recommendations that are contained in the report, Your Worship, and we ask open for any questions of council.
Okay, any questions or comments, Councillor Houston? Move recommendations, support Councillor Dowie. Oh, sorry, question?
No, yeah, well, thank you, Your Worship. The question I had just regarding the delegation of the approval for noise bylaw exemptions, that is not only for the next 1 month period, but that would be what time frame, just ongoing from here on out?
If I may, yes, Your Worship.
Okay, I do support that. The only, I guess, comment I would make is if there are any of those exemptions, can council just be made aware of any of those that go out so that, you know, should there be an event or something that is going on, we'll likely be getting a call just so that we're aware, because we won't see those come through anymore. So that's my only question or ask, I guess.
Yep, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Your Worship, but we most certainly will let council know.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Dowie?
Well, thank you, Your Worship. Actually, Councillor Houston's question was identical to mine.
Okay, so you're okay to support his
I-
recommendation?
Yes, just I think the awareness piece
Yeah.
is good.
Yeah, yeah.
Important, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you. Just a question too, is I know in that plaza, not necessarily this business, but there had been occasions where fireworks were let off and, in the evenings. And number one, obviously, the fire chief was not aware of that and so forth. They were quite late. So I'm hoping that your the exemption covers the fact that no fireworks.
If I may, Your Worship, should the request include fireworks, I certainly will ensure that that is referred to the fire chief, as the fireworks bylaw is his area of responsibility.
Yep. Okay, very good. Any further questions or comments? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just mentioning the fireworks. I don't believe we have a current process or a current permit process, right, for fireworks? Or maybe if the fire chief is here just to advise, us and any of those watching what that
Yep.
Process is, because I know I have received calls. So.
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Houston, we do have permit requirements only for public displays. If someone was setting them off say somebody set off a small display in their backyard, there's no permit requirement for that under the current bylaw, but for public displays there is a permit requirement. So.
Thank you. So, if one of these businesses were to do it on private property, they're currently not required to pull a permit.
That's correct.
Okay. No, thank you.
That can be dangerous. Maybe that's something, Chief, that we need to maybe monitor, because I've seen situations and I can give you examples where things got a little out of hand on private property.
Yeah, if I may, Your Worship, we are currently working on revisions to the fireworks bylaw to better control the hazards.
Okay, thank you. All right. Duly moved, supported. Any further questions or comments? Having heard none, all in favor? Opposed, carried. Move on to financial services. Certainly want to call on Mr. Kitsos, our Director of Financial Services, summarize the reports and certainly recommendation on development charges reserve fund. Mr. Kitsos.
Thank you and good evening, Mayor and members of Council. So this report is our annual report on the development charge, basically development charge activity and statement of our reserve fund balances at year ended 2020. So essentially, you can think of this as a tally sheet. We basically track expenditures that we incur that are for projects that are driven by growth. And we track those against revenues that we receive through development charges. And those are revenues that are from growth. So ideally they would net to zero, but in circumstances, of course, they will fluctuate, the balances will fluctuate. So what you'll see this year in our unfunded categories, you'll see there actually is a typo there. The fire should read zero. Just catching that now, but the unfunded, the key thing here is in 2019, you'll see our unfunded categories were at a deficit of around 16 million. So this year, at year ending 2020, that has been reduced to roughly 15 million. And that is because of development charges revenue has exceeded our expenditures for the year by that amount. So this is this table lists the DC categories or reserve funds that carry a deficit balance. So in attachment 1, I think that's the next couple of pages, you'll see, so you'll see these are the DC reserve fund categories that have positive balances. So they total in total, they're around $1 million. So the net is roughly 14 million deficit. So yes, it is a rather large deficit, primarily due to wastewater. And that's, of course, the costs that went into projects in the Old Castle area, primarily, that will encourage growth or facilitate growth. So if there are any questions, I could take those now.
Questions or comments? Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to Mr. Kitsos, thank you for the statement. I guess sort of the simple question with my simple mind. I mean, should we be really alarmed with this this kind of being in the red of that magnitude?
Through the mayor to Councillor Altenhoff. It is a rather large balance. Whether we would be alarmed or not, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. Really, these are investments that have been made. They will facilitate growth. So really, the infrastructure is in place to allow for growth. So really, it's a matter of once those development projects come on board, the DC revenues will start to come in and they should offset it. So theoretically, as long as those investments are sound, which I believe they are, the revenues will come in time. The challenge for us is that sometimes the timing is off. So, our investment occurred, far earlier than the development has. And that's for various reasons. So, we're paying a little bit in principal and interest for borrowed funds. So that contributes to the deficit. But that borrowing is factored into the calculation of development charges when we review the development charges every 5 years. So there is a means to recoup that.
Yep, supplementary.
Yeah, and given this, and I appreciate that information, certainly to those individuals watching as well, get an appreciation for it. But we also know these significant large infrastructure costs are cheaper now than they will be down the road. I hate to say it. So it's good to see and good to articulate that point as being an investment that will hopefully spark and be a good catalyst for development, at a as best it can be kind of level. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, those dollars are recoverable, but it certainly sends a message. And then I know that every member of council here are saying that we've got to get our development going. All right, on the report, thank you, Mr. Kitsos. If nothing further, then a motion to receive the report. Councillor Houston, Councillor Altenhoff. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. All right, business plan and budget timetable. Again, Mr. Kitsos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report is recommending our budget timetable for the 2022 budget. So we are recommending a timetable that would see a budget tabled in November with the ability to adopt in December so that we would be able to start the 2002 calendar year with an approved budget. It also allows for council consultation in September and public engagement for 2 weeks at the back end of September.
All right, questions? Yes, Councillor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship. And this might be, to the clerk or Tom for yourself as well. I had a conversation with Councillor Wilder, and we both sit on the Dog Pound Committee. He was looking at, or we're looking at meeting, prior to each municipality coming or preparing the budget. So just from a timing perspective, if there's any increases, from the dog pound, When would we ideally like to see those from Tecumseh, just so I can advise Councillor Wilder, who chairs that committee, and then we can make sure that we're on time for our budget presentations.
Through the mayor to Councillor Houston. So we develop our budget with our departments. It starts really in August, but we work on it and go through meetings with our CAO through to mid-October. So really leading up to around, I think our cutoff is around, we'd like to cut off around October 20th. So anytime before then would make the tabled budget. So that would be ideal. We do, you know, if we do recognize that we can't get all this information in time for the budget. So there are instances where we do have to make some estimates. So, you know, that does happen, but if there are ways to get those figures to us in September or October, that would be great.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
All right, any further questions or comments? Councillor Altenhoff, Deputy Mayor Bichetti.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to Mr. Kitsos, please refresh my memory. I'm sorry, I'm trying to recall for public engagement here, we've allocated 2 weeks. I thought it was a bit longer than that in the past. You know, I know it's not 4 months, but I thought, was it 4 weeks, 3 weeks? Did we give a bit longer? And if I'm wrong, please just correct me. But just giving our residents, I think, an opportunity to you know, provide input over perhaps a bit of a longer time. I would be happy to support something like that.
Through the mayor to Councillor Altenhoff. So I'm going to go off memory, but I think you're correct. I think what we have done in the past is that we would make our budget survey available the day after the council consultation, and then usually would allow it to run to the end of the month. So it usually would last about 3 weeks or just under 3 weeks. I think this year I think we just reduced it to 2 weeks. We have seen that the participation with the budget survey has really has tapered. What we do find is there's great participation at the start, and then it kind of tapers off and then really peters out. So, you know, we could extend it if that is the council's wish, for sure. That's easy enough to do. You know, and we definitely would, if there's ways, we try to, we do include in our media release at the council consultation to provide awareness of the budget survey that it is available. So if there's other means that we can to make available to encourage participation, of course, we're welcome to any ideas.
Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship. Just to remain that, you know, keep that consistency. I mean, would it be very taxing on the proposed timeline if it ran 1 week into October, Mr. Kitsos?
Through the mayor.
You know, specific to the public engagement agenda or the timeline item.
Right. Yeah. And so so the reason we have the cutoff at the end of September is because basically at the 1st of October is when we commence our meetings with the departments and the CAO. So, you know, by that time, the departments have already developed and submitted their budgets. So if we allow the participation up until the end of September, that allows departments, well, we usually release the results around, you know, 7 or 8 days after the cutoff for the survey. So by the time the departments get it, for them to have an opportunity to take into consideration those comments into their budget, they would really have to have the results before that first week of October. You know, we could extend it. It would mean that, you know, any late submissions might risk not being taken into consideration.
Yeah, I don't want to complicate this schedule, but I would like to keep that consistency to what we've done in the past. I mean, if it's a daunting task and it's council's not interested in extending it that 1 week, I just want to give the residents an opportunity for input. That's really the only reason why I brought it up, because ultimately, you know, it's their, you know, significantly their funds. So I would be more than happy to you know, amend that to allow it for that additional week. Again, just for the benefit of the residents, but as long as it doesn't impact the process of this, you know, the budget timeline.
if I can add through the mayor.
Go ahead, Mr.
No,
Kitsos.
yeah, extending it a week, I don't think is going to impact our budget. So I think that's, during our meetings from the first week of October through to mid-October, we do have an opportunity to make some edits. So it is something we could probably extend a bit. I think if you're talking, I don't have a calendar in front of me, but if we go maybe to October 3rd or 4th, I think that would allow us an opportunity to make sure that any comments could be considered.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a question for Tom or maybe Ms. Evans regarding the recent focus groups that council undertook with senior administration. Where would that fall along? Is there a report coming, or is that something we deal with on the 14th of September under council consultation? Or is that done through a report as information for us?
If I could, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
I'll answer that question. So through you to Deputy Mayor Piketty, I think what we are planning to do is compile the input that we've had and provide that to council through a separate session on a strategic plan update, kind of a midterm checkup. And that would be done, we're aiming for sometime in September also, so that direction from council can be worked into the budget process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Yes, Councilor Dowie?
Well, thank you, Worship. I'd like to show support for Councillor Altenhoff's request to go to the 3 weeks. The budget is a substantial document, and granted, that's not what's being reviewed at the front end, but I know just over the last year with people being home and they've seen a lot more of their community, I expect that we will see a heightened interest this year in the budget process. And so having that additional time, I think will prove to be of great value for gaining information as we deliberate.
Okay. Councilor Altenhoff?
Thank you, Worship. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at my calendar. And again, on that point, the week after the 29th would be October 6th. So if, I look to Mr. Kitsos, would that be suitable? That's going to basically give, our residents the end of that week on the 29th, and then the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday as opportunities to get feedback. Do you think that would be, no pun intended, but extremely taxing on the timetable?
Through the mayor to Councilor Altenhoff, so I appreciate that one. I'm just looking at our timetable here. So adding those to October 6th. And so tabling is for November 9th. Yes, I think, yeah, we can do that.
And I would like to make that amendment, if you don't mind, please, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Go ahead. Moved by Councilor Altenhoff, supported by Councilor Dowie. We had a week to the consultation process to the budget.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments on the amendment? Go ahead, Councilor Jobin. Oh, you're moving. Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. And on the timetable, I guess a regular motion. Moved by Councilor Houston, supported Councilor Altenhoff. All in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Kitsos. Parks and Recreation. I'd like to call upon our Director of Parks and Recs and Services, Mr. Anthony. So that's to amend the 2021-2025 Arena and Pool 5-year capital works plan and the arena boiler replacement.
Yes, thank you, Mayor McNamara and members of council. And this just follows up the verbal report that I did provide council with at the last council meeting. There was a boiler failure. We were able to source a boiler. I can confirm to council now that that boiler is back in place and it is operational. So it is recommended that the boiler replacement capital project be added to the PRS 2021-01, 2021-2025 Arena and Pool 5-year capital works plan, and that the arena boiler replacement capital project in the amount not to exceed 30,000 net of 100% refundable HST be authorized and funded out of the arena life cycle reserve, and further that the arena boiler replacement capital project be awarded to Vollmer Mechanical Contractors Limited. And I'm open to any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anthony. Any questions or comments? The show must go on. So all in favor? Oh, wait, I got to move it first. Sorry. I'm ahead of myself. Moved by Deputy Mayor Becchetti and supported by Councilor Jobin. No further questions or comments. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. All right, next, you're still on, Mr. Anthony, and it's on the Lacasse Park Pickleball Complex Tender Award.
Yes, and once again, Mayor McNamara, members of council, this report is reflective of the capital budget that was approved this year for the Lacasse Pickleball Court Complex. We did develop terms of reference and sent out an RFT, a request for tender. We did have 4 companies bid on it. Unfortunately, 2 were not compliant. One did not use the proper forms and the other one did not use the proper electronic submission. They sent it in by email. So the two bids that did come in, the budget was for 600,000. They did come in over budget. That is reflective as what we have seen in material costs, labor, shortage of labor in a lot of projects. So we have reviewed the tenders, and the 2 most important parts of this package are the actual courts themselves and the building, which helps provide space for storage, also for tournament hosting and activities through regular pickleball. So again, the recommendation here is that the Lacasse Park Pickleball Complex project overall budget be increased from the original 600,000 to a total of 755,000. And that the increase of 155,000 be covered by a $50,000 increase in funding commitment from the Tecumseh Pickleball Association, and the remaining 105,000 funded equally between the infrastructure reserve and the park's life cycle reserve at 52,500 each. And further that the project to construct the Lacasse Pickleball Complex be awarded to Front Construction Industries Limited in the amount of $711,505.92. I must also certainly commend the Tecumseh Pickleball Association. When I called and told them that the budget had come in, or the project, had come in over budget, they were very open and very quick to respond that they would up their fundraising commitment from their existing 100,000 to 150,000 to help cover some of the cost of the over expenditure. Very much appreciated, and shows the support that this club has towards pickleball and the community. I'm open for any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Anthony. Questions or comments to Mr. Anthony? Councillor Altno.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to Mr. Anthony, maybe more so on the Parks Life Cycle Reserve, or perhaps to Mr. Kitsos. I just want to see or get a feeling for the impact of that additional 52,500 from each of those. Are those reserves kind of able to handle that impact? Please, if you don't mind.
Mr. Kitsos?
Sure. Through the mayor to Councillor Altenhoff. So yes, the both of those reserves have sufficient balances. They are so I won't go and say that they're super healthy, because we do have in our plan, we do want to increase our allocation to the Parks Life Cycle Reserve. So that's something that we indicated in the 2021 budget, where we want to get our annual allocation up to $500,000 per year. So we're not quite there yet. So that does tell you that it's not fully funded. However, it does have a positive balance of close to $1 million so far accumulated. And our infrastructure reserve similarly We're not at our annual allocation, target allocation. We're close. Yeah, so, materially, this will not impact that reserve either, but you're correct. I mean, these are all additional costs, and when we develop our targets and our allocations, they're based on estimated costs, and this is an estimated cost that has come in greater than estimate. However, there are several instances, particularly earlier in the year, where tenders have come in much lower than our estimates. So it does work both ways. So I would say, it's something that we should definitely keep an eye on. It's something that we review every year, when we're looking at our allocations. But these two in particular are not concerning.
And just to follow up, I mean, I think the rationale for the increase was material costs, which I think, we can all attest to, going to buy a piece of lumber or whatever it might be, concrete, it is a lot more than what it used to be. So not too surprising, but if I'm reading it correctly, these increases or these additional taxes against those reserves should not have any really impact on being able to move forward as we've kind of envisioned. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kitsos, are we tracking this year a surplus?
Yes, a large surplus, yes. Now, I should caution that obviously the
You
significant.
still have 5 months to go. I get it.
Well, oh, you're sorry. I thought I'm talking 2020, of course, which will have a large surplus. Q2 variants, we haven't, we just started. So yeah, I couldn't tell you that at this point in time. What I can say is that, because of COVID, that's thrown a bit of a wrench into everything. So in 2020, of course, we haven't brought our year-end variance forward yet. So that has a significant surplus. A lot of that's going to reserves to offset the continuing impacts of COVID. So this year, for sure, we will have shortfalls in revenues, but we do have those reserves to draw upon from our 2020 surplus. So, having not completed our Q2 variance, I'm hesitant to make a projection at this stage as to how.
Yeah, and I really believe that there's more coming. So from our provincial counterparts. But anyway, we'll see how that goes. Because I thought maybe through our rate stabilization, because this is a one shot to this contract. It's but I guess it doesn't matter which bucket you're going to get it out of, but it's a one shot deal. So I thought maybe it might have been better out of the stabilization fund, because I think that one carries, I don't, there's a fair amount in there.
And so what I would say in that regard is that for projects like this, so what we've done typically for parks projects that are growth related, we have funded 50-50 from infrastructure reserve and from the parks development life cycle reserve. So we're being consistent with our funding practice.
Okay, very good. Anything further? Yes, Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you to Paul. Actually, to Mr. Kitsos as well. But my questions are mainly directed to Paul. You know what? I have to say, even though I do own a couple pickleball rackets now, thanks to a Christmas gift and balls, I certainly did not anticipate the level of support for this project that has been relayed to me from people all across the municipality. This is a well-loved project by many, and I gotta tip my hat. This is very much, I'd say, a below the radar growth that's happening in this sport, with so many looking forward to seeing this project through. It is unfortunate to see the price increase, but I have certainly been the victim of the same in my day job, with one project coming in about 43% over. And what do you do with that? Do you build it now, or you wait and wait and wait, and there's no guarantee of things coming back to normal anytime soon. So it's a matter of, do you fish or cut bait? And given the feedback that many residents have given to me for this, and given the that we have found the financial allocations and new infrastructure levies contributing a bit through the reserve, that we ought, and the support of the Tecumseh Pickleball Association, that they're kicking another 50,000 to help make up the shortfall. I think that shows a great deal of partnership, and that this is very much a needed facility. So I just have one question, and it comes to me from time to time from different residents who are a bit more fearful of implementation. Maybe Mr. Anthony could describe where in Lacasse Park the complex will be located, and that it's not going to be directly adjacent to homes, and therefore the sound of the rackets might not, or ideally wouldn't reach at a high volume some of the adjacent neighbors.
Yes, and through the mayor to Councillor Dowie, that's a good point. And we did an extensive search when we looked to property that we owned for this facility. The Lacasse Park came out in a number of first, one location, parking, the ability where we have outdoor washrooms already, so we didn't have to put a washroom facility as well with this. So to answer your question, the pickleball facility is basically in the middle of the park that goes right off the shelter. So it's not on either side that's close to the residents. We strategically placed it in the middle so that it has equal distance from the homes. So there's, I believe, 180 feet plus both sides towards home. So it's not like Shawana where it's backed up to a homeowner. It's in the middle of the court. And there's certainly adequate space that it wouldn't be, similar to what respects we found at Shawana Park.
Thank you.
Okay, on the report. Members of council, moved by Councilor Houston, support Deputy Mayor Becchetti. The motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Planning and Building Services. Okay, I'd like to call upon our manager of Planning Services, Mr. Jeffries, to summarize and bring his report forward and with a recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council will recall that earlier this year, it endorsed the submission of an application for funding pertaining to a one-year on-demand transit pilot project through the Canada Healthy Communities Initiative. And we've recently learned that we are awarded $27,000 through that initiative. And the official announcement pertaining to the funding took place this past Friday here at the Town Hall. As a quick refresher on what on-demand transit service entails, it essentially involves the use of computer algorithms that respond to a service request to develop instantaneous routing. And so although the bus may use the existing network, it won't be following a fixed route or a fixed schedule. Its route and schedule will be determined by that computer algorithm and the service requests. Those requests are made through an app on a smartphone or through a call-in option in the event that someone doesn't have a smartphone. Administration believes that there's great potential with this service to increase ridership and to enhance the reliability of the transit service. It may also allow us to extend the service to areas that currently aren't served, such as Tecumseh Vista or other areas of the Tecumseh Hamlet and Amy Croft Drive, where we receive quite a few requests for service. So once we've engaged a service provider, we envision a four-step process, starting with step one, where we would analyze and simulate, and that we believe would take roughly 4 weeks and take us through August, and that involves network data analysis, selecting corridors and operating parameters, followed by step two, which is to plan the pilot project, which would take another 6 to 8 weeks, bringing us to September, October of this year. And that involves setting up the software, installing the tablets on the buses for the drivers, training the first student drivers in the use of those tablets and other staff that might be involved in the service, and pre-launch tests with those first student drivers. And I should note that first student has been very cooperative with this proposed shift in transit service. and they're looking forward to working with us to deliver it. The third step is to launch the pilot project, and that's a 12-month initiative, which would take us to November of 2022. And then if it's successful, we would look to permanently implement on-demand transit. So in accordance with that work program that I've just outlined for you, we are recommending that council authorize the initiation of a 1-year pilot project for an on-demand transit service.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jeffries. All right, members of council. Councilor Dowie, move the report? Yeah. Or, yeah, and I'll come back to you. And Councilor Houston, support. Councilor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to Chad, quite an exciting transformation proposed for our transit system. I know we've been plateaued for a number of years in terms of our demand and access to the system. I know in recent months, we've received a number of concerns related to specific stops, and the impact on the adjoining residents. So I guess I'm hoping to get a bit of clarity on this. Does the on-demand system eliminate our existing stop network, or will there still be the fixed stops that people would wait at? Just hoping you can elaborate on that point as to what's maintained and what from the present system, and then what ends up being an expanded service.
Great question, and through Mr. Mayor to Councilor Dowie. Right now, our understanding of the service is that it would operate within the existing network, but there's that first 8 to 12 week period where we'd be working with our service provider to sort of work through the details of how the service will in fact operate, and if there are opportunities to perhaps alter the route in some minor ways. But we anticipate it using the existing network of stops. The difference will be that it won't always go to the stops along that network. So if that stop that you're referring to is in an area that doesn't have frequent ridership, it may not go by that area very often at all. Whereas other stops that are more popular would have greater ridership and greater frequency of stopping throughout the day.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Houston and Councilor Otenhoff.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to Chad. You've mentioned Amy Croft, which we all know is in Lakeshore, and Councilor Jobin and I sit on the intermunicipal committee, and Lakeshore is going through a study right now on launching. So do we have any idea yet of how the on-demand would integrate into Amy Croft or into Lakeshore, or again, it would pick up in the food basics area? I'm just wondering, how would that would work municipally? And I know we haven't had those conversations yet, but what would that look like?
Mr. Mayor?
I'm going to add, I think Ms. Evans, I think has had numerous conversations with the CAO in Lakeshore.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, and certainly then Chad can round out the answer, but yes, at the most recent intermunicipal committee meeting, we did have a presentation, kind of an interim presentation on the feasibility study that Lakeshore is undertaking on transit. And I have had, to the mayor's point, I have had conversations with the CAO there. And we thought we would, once they get a little bit further along, we'll meet at the administrative level on both the transit feasibility study in Lakeshore, as well as our on-demand pilot project in Tecumseh, to perhaps sort out some of those details before returning to council for, with a plan on that.
Okay.
Okay, Councilor Otenhoff.
Thank you, Worship, and through you, to Mr. Jeffries, to administration, And to everyone, first off, obviously, congratulations on the support from the federal government. And I see this, sorry, I get really excited because I call it a pilot project. I call it interesting research that's really, we're a bit of pioneers here because we're kind of the first in the region to test this out. And, like anything, it can be great, it could be good, and it will most likely have some hiccups or some troubles. So I would just, as a suggestion, maybe just encourage that through each of those steps, have kind of a looping process, because you may discover some hiccups or some issues. And I'm hoping that we won't abandon it right away, but we'll work through those issues. We'll try to figure it out, because I really believe in my mind, I see this could be very good. I mean, without anything going on, maybe it's just status quo. And then when people start asking for, a pickup, we'll see, the logic behind the software start to adjust the routes that occur, ultimately for the benefit of timing and the patrons that are using the service. So I would just encourage, maybe in each step, a bit of an iterative process to try to work out the bugs, within this pilot project. And to be honest with you, again, as a researcher, disseminate this. I think this is a good opportunity for our other municipalities to maybe learn from us and see what we're going to be, discovering on the way, the troubles, the goods, the bads, and how we dealt with it. And ultimately, this will help, I think, on the broader scale. So thank you.
Yeah, there's Belleville, the city of Belleville's been doing it for 4 to 5 years now. Town of Innisfil is doing it. I call it bus Uber on steroids. And the beauty of it in the city of Belleville is especially on off-peak hours. That's where they really benefited from it. Like the bus will go by 5 or 6 of its old stops to pick up that passenger that's grabbed one of these, and it's got the app. It says, I'll be at that bus stop 42 at 9 o'clock. The bus is there to pick them up. So I really believe it's good for efficiencies. It's great, I think, in climate change times. And then it's really maximizing the bus service. So Innisfil, speaking with Lynn Dolan, also a member of AMO, they've seen great success there too. And they have various modes. They even have Uber, the on-demand bus service, and others. But it's innovative, and but it maximizes the efficiency. And I think that's what we all want. And good for climate change, good for a whole host of reasons. Yes, Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm really pleased to hear you say that, Councillor Altenhoff, because I think that you're bang on. COVID has played havoc with our ridership over the last over a year now, and we're not quite through the woods there yet. So even returning to normal is going to be a little bit of a challenge, and then having enough data and enough time to work out the bugs. It may necessitate an evaluation at the end of the 12 months, and perhaps we extend the pilot for a little bit longer. We don't know, and we'll certainly do our best within that 12 months to test the system. Like you, we're very excited for it and how it could transform transit in Tecumseh. So we want to do the best job we can with this opportunity and give council as much solid information to base their decision on. But very good points you make there. Thank you.
All right, on the report. Moved by Councillor Altenhoff, and then do I support that Councillor Jobin? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That report carries. Thank you. All right, we also have Planning Building Services 2021-38 zoning bylaw amendment. That's condition consent application B-10-21 Linda Dano, 5074 North Talbot Road, and that's scheduling of a public meeting. Move. Councillor Altenhoff, Councillor Houston. On the motion, all in favor? Was if any of that is carried. And then we'll move on to PBS 2021-39 site plan control. That's TDL Group, Tim Hortons Restaurant, 5250 Walker Road. Pretty straightforward, but I know Mr. Jeffries, if you want to bring that forward.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you could turn it to attachment 1. It's a fairly straightforward amendment to an existing site plan agreement that is being proposed by the TDL Group, which is more commonly known as Tim Hortons. The property is in the Old Castle settlement area on the southeast corner of North Talbot Road and Walker Road. It's about 1 hectare in size, and the Tim Hortons is on the south portion of the subject property. If you could go to attachment 2, Dave, please. So what the amendment is hoping to achieve is to facilitate improvements to the existing double drive-through lanes, which include new signage and ordering station in the existing double lane area, and the addition of a second lane at the pickup portion of the drive-through. And a unique feature of this second lane would be a new overhead conveyor delivery system that will provide food and drinks to vehicles in this new second drive-through lane to the south of the building. Those revisions will involve relocating the southerly tier of parking so that it gains access from the southerly access drive directly. And to accomplish that, there'll be some removal of existing curbs and asphalted area and installation of new curbing, which will actually result in a net increase in landscaping. The site's designated general commercial, it's zoned general commercial or neighborhood commercial C2-5, and the proposed changes conform to the policies of the OP and are in compliance with the C2-5 zone provisions. The proponents also submitted a grading and stormwater drainage drawing that has just recently been approved by Public Works. So, Mr. Mayor, we're recommending that council adopt the bylaw authorizing execution of the site plan control amending agreement.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jeffries. Any questions or comments on his report? All right, council's pleasure. Moved by Councilor Dowling, Deputy Mayor McKetty, support. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. Next, PBS 2021-40 zoning bylaw amendment, additional residential lot that was on subject to our public meeting today. Cameron and Margaret Brown. Oh no, it's a different one. Sorry, spoke out of turn. Amendment, additional residential lot, Cameron and Margaret Brown, 12305 County Road 34, and it's scheduling of a public meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to spend a little bit more time on this. Oh,
yep.
I apologize. Councilor Altenhoff had his hand up before I.
Yep, go ahead, Councilor Altenhoff.
No, Your Worship, I was just willing to support it, but.
Okay, so
to speak on it, please.
Hold that thought.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll be brief, but I do want to point out to council some of the nuances of this report because it has to do with alternative or additional residential units or ARUs, which are going to become a really hot topic in the world of planning over the next couple of years. So the subject property in this case is a 0.57 hectare property in the Maidstone hamlet on the south side of County Road 34. And it contains an existing single unit residential dwelling. It's about 2,600 square feet in area. Attachment 2, please, Dave. So this gives you the context of where it's located. You can see it's on the edge of a tier of lots stretching from Malden Road to almost to halfway to Manning Road, which is about 500 meters to the east. The core of the Maidstone hamlet is to the northwest, where there's a church, a school, and a park. Across the road is some more residential. To the south is agricultural, but this is generally the limit of the built-up area in the Maidstone hamlet settlement area. And what the proponents are hoping to do is to establish an additional residential unit. And on attachments 3, 4, and 5, you'll see the concept. This is the site plan. It shows the existing dwelling in yellow and the proposed ARU to the rear of the existing dwelling, which would be accessed through a driveway extension. Attachment 4, please, Dave. And this is a preliminary floor plan. It just shows you how this ARU would be laid out, and that there would be a 3-car garage that would serve both the ARU and the existing dwelling. And then finally, on attachment 5, you can see an architectural elevation of the proposed ARU unit. So the unit would get its utilities from the existing dwelling, with the exception of a new on-site septic system that's being proposed in accordance with the building code. And the proponents are hoping to rezone it from Hamlet Residential RH to a site-specific Hamlet Residential RH-6 zone. And that would allow for this ARU to be built on the property. The provincial policy statement encourages ARUs, encourages all types of residential intensification, as does the County of Essex. This happens to be within a secondary settlement area that establishes that new development will be generally limited to infill development, which this is. The county OP also establishes that second dwelling units are permitted. And then our recently approved Tecumseh official plan sets out under the Maidstone Hamlet residential policies that ARUs are permitted subject to these criteria, that they're permitted either within a dwelling unit or within an ancillary structure, as long as they're subordinate, they're integrating the surroundings, they're compatible in design and scale, they're on full municipal services except where the property is not yet serviced by municipal sanitary sewers, and that's an important distinction in this case, and that parking access, stormwater management, tree preservation, landscaping, amenity areas are all adequately addressed. So this policy was put in place because the Planning Act made it necessary to establish policies for ARUs in the official plan and to permit them as of right within singles, semis, row houses, and in ancillary structures. So we have yet to implement the direction of that policy, but we will be doing that in accordance with a work program that we'll be bringing to council in the near future. Until that time, we propose to develop guidelines for ARUs that would help us to assess proposals like this one and others that come along that are looking to rezone their property into a site-specific zone to permit these until such time as there are adequate provisions in the new bylaw to allow them as of right. So throughout this rezoning process, and what we're asking for tonight is just the scheduling of a public meeting on September 14th, but we will also be bringing forward to council on that night proposed guidelines that would help to steer the design and location of ARUs throughout the town. So those are my comments, Mr. Mayor. I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Any questions or comments? I just have maybe one question in that, and it looks like two separate. I mean, we actually see it right on Riverside Drive, where two homes are being built on kind of the same property. Now, the question, I guess, would be on this one. Obviously, it must be subordinates or family members or whoever or whatever. But what's the future like if somebody says, geez, I want to separate, now that they're built and they're there, I want to sever that and separate those properties? Is there something within the OP, or the thought is, no, this is a package deal?
Mr. Mayor, that would not be permitted. The severance of an ARU would not be permitted in the future. And there are various ways to address that. And the guidelines that we hope to develop will address that very question.
Okay. No, I'm okay with that. So we're looking to schedule a public meeting. So I need a motion from council to allow that. Councillor Jobin and Councillor Houston. Councillor Dowie, question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Public Works, 5A, call upon our Director of Public Works Environmental Service summarize the reports and recommendation, and that's on the Canada Community Revitalization Fund.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. The report before you today, there are two recommendations. The first is that the report be received by council, and that the town's application to the Canada Community Revitalization Fund for the Riverside Drive Trail project be endorsed. So the Canada Community Revitalization Fund was announced in June earlier this year for a national investment of $500 million over the next 2 years. Projects under this program could receive a maximum contribution of up to $750,000 with funding to cover up to 75% of the total project costs. The deadline for this application was last Friday, July 23rd. In review of the possible projects that met the eligible criteria, were close to being shovel ready and would maximize the grant amount, administration determined that the Riverside Drive Trail project was the ideal candidate. So we did submit the application on Thursday of last week prior to the deadline, and we were seeking the maximum funding amount of $750,000. The start date for the funding program is retroactive back to April 19th of earlier this year, with a project completion date of March 31st, 2023. And in the previous reports to council on the Riverside Drive Trail, the project costs were estimated at about $1,239,000. If successful with the grant, the amount that would be funded by the town for that project would be reduced to close to about $490,000. I'm available if there are any questions.
Good idea. Councillor Houston.
I'm prepared to move it.
Thank you. Support. Councillor Jobin. Questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. All right, 5B, the Public Works 2021-36 52058 concession road sanitary sewer connection agreement. Mr. Bartnick.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So the report before you does have two recommendations again. The first one is that the report be received. And the second, that bylaw 2021-57, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the sewer connection agreement with the owner of 5205 8th Concession Road, which will facilitate the property sanitary connection to the 8th Concession Road trunk sanitary sewer be adopted. So the owner of the property is proposing to construct a new building and parking lot. And with that, he is seeking to make a connection to the sanitary sewer on the 8th concession. Administration has been working on a Part 12 cost recovery bylaw for the 8th concession sanitary outlet, similar to the one completed for the North Talbot Road outlet. We do intend to bring forward an update report to council and bylaw that outlines the previous work on this file, as well as some recent changes to the Municipal Act, updates to the town's water wastewater master plan, the development charges, background study and bylaw, as well as revisions to the preliminary design report. So prior to the cost recovery bylaw being adopted, the town solicitor has drafted an agreement that outlines the estimated sanitary charge that would be assessed. In this case, it would be $40,000. It also identifies that once the cost recovery bylaw is completed, the balance of the adjustment would be adjusted either upwards or downwards, whichever way. And this approach and standard agreement has been previously used on 2 other properties to date in allowing them to connect to this trunk sanitary sewer on the 8th concession.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bartnick. Questions or comments? And a motion to receive the report as presented, and then it's also in the bylaw package. Councillor Houston, move. Support. Councillor Altenhoff. No further questions or comments. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. And I will surmise, Mr. Bartnick, 5175, 8th concessions, the same.
Yes, your worship. The only difference would be the assessment amount. So on this one, the assessment was estimated at about $100,000, and that is due to the increased size of the property compared to the previous report.
Okay, thank you. On the report, moved by Deputy Mayor Becchetti, supported by Councillor Houston. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. Madam Clerk, I believe we're ready for bylaws.
Thank you, Your Worship. On this evening's agenda, we have bylaw number 57, which authorizes the sewer connection agreement as just previously reported on with Rizcona. We also have bylaw number 58 that authorizes the signing of the sewer connection agreement as also just reported on with regards to Emico Holdings Limited. We have bylaw number 59, which is the bylaw to authorize a site plan control agreement with Demeter Developments. This was previously reported on at an earlier council meeting. And we have bylaw number 60, which is an amendment to our procurement policies and procedures as reported at the last Policies and Priorities Committee meeting. And lastly, we have bylaw number 61, which authorizes the execution of an encroachment agreement with Kona Sushi on Tecumseh Road. And that was also previously reported on at the last council meeting. We're respectfully asking for first and second readings of all of these bylaws, and if appropriate, third and final.
All right, on 2 readings, moved by Councillor Houston and Councillor Altenhoff, support. Any questions or comments on the readings? Having heard none, all in favor? Opposed, carried. So third and final reading is in order. Councillor Jobin, move. Councillor Houston, support. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. Any unfinished business? I see none. New business. Councillor, whoa. Where we been the last 2 weeks? Okay, Councillor Altenhoff, Houston, Deputy Mayor Becchetti, followed by Councillor Dowery.
Thank you, Worship. And through you to administration, I've been receiving a number of calls, sadly, again, about speeding and kind of driving concerns. Mostly, I think it's quite well attributed to the construction that is occurring on Manning. Now, patrons, drivers are finding alternate routes. A couple routes that have been brought to my attention where the speed certainly is significant is Green Valley Drive, as well as Edgewater. To be honest with you, I live on Edgewater and I have noticed it as well. So I think if we certainly could have a stronger police presence and enforcement in these areas, would be much appreciated. I know, in speaking with a resident very recently on Green Valley Drive, he previously has communicated with the OPP, and his opinion is that their presence has not increased at all. In fact, I think he had some very choice words with me indicating his faith in the OPP is pretty well fallen off the radar. So I'm hoping we can resurrect that faith. Timing, it's difficult to say. It's kind of all through the day. So I can really just kind of indicate that it seems to be these areas where people are trying to find alternate routes as a result of the Manning closure. So I'll leave these roads perhaps identified to Miss Evans, and certainly just really encouraging a stronger police presence and enforcement. I'm a firm believer that you pass out a few tickets and all of a sudden you're going to see many people's driving habits change. So would be appreciated. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Houston, and then followed by Deputy Mayor McKinney and Councilor Dowie.
Thank you, and through you to Phil. We've had the last two big rains, and I've had a couple residents on Corby that have flooded. I know last year we did a brushing in the Gwen drain report is coming. I realize that, but I'm just wondering if we can ask Windsor on their portion of the Gwen, if they're able to just take a look at it, see if there's any obstructions. The street flooded, but I realize that we did have a lot of rain, but just if there's, if they can check out, make sure that there's no obstructions within the drain itself, it would be appreciated.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. My question was unfinished business, so this will throw the clerk off. But the question regarding the parking spots on Tecumseh Road, question to Phil, is that something we can do in-house through students? Is in timelines, again, when we're looking at getting the paint on the asphalt there for those parking spots?
Thank you. Through your worship, I believe that item should be removed from the unfinished business. We did bring a report, I think, last council. So we are looking at trying to retain a contractor. So hopefully in September, we'll have somebody lined up. The challenge is going to be that I don't think there's a local contractor that does this type of the removal that we're looking for. There are a few that actually do the painting that we would look to retain, but the challenge will be the removal of some of the existing lines. And I think we ran into that when we did the Les Bronce Road bike lanes, right? So Kirby is kind of reaching out just to kind of gauge who may be interested. And we'll definitely be following our purchasing policy, but I don't think the students would be the answer here, just with regards to kind of the specialty, equipment required for the removal of those existing lines.
Safety issue as well, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. Just through you to the administration, just it sort of ties to the resident concerns being expressed for the bus stop, and actually, it's conversely to that is Canada Post. I know it's been some time since we've had them visit our meeting of council, and I'm wondering if we might be able to put out an invite to Canada Post to come as a delegation to a future meeting, and maybe we can have them engage with the different neighborhoods that have concerns over the density of boxes and location, and see if we can work some of these irritating issues out, that we can really tell the story as to why they're problematic, and might be able to get some resolutions.
Yes, Madam CAO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dowie. I'm actually on the verge of being in touch with Canada Post regarding that matter, and I can certainly put forward your idea of appearing as a delegation for their consideration.
Thank you very much.
Okay, anything further under new business? Okay, so then we'll move on. Any notices of motion? Okay, then confirmatory bylaw, 3 readings on the proceedings of this meeting. Moved by Councillor Altenhoff, Councillor Houston, support. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Our next meeting will be September the 14th. We have early start, 4:30, and we have 3 zoning amendment meetings, a quarter revision, and our regular council meeting on at 7 p.m. So with that, if there's no further business, adjournment is in order. Councillor Altenhoff and Councillor Houston, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Once again, members of council, thank you. Administration, those who are viewing from home, all I want to say is enjoy your summer. I know some are going to be working a little harder than others, I think, pounding the pavement. And, but with that, enjoy a safe summer. Take some time, reflect with your families, and we'll gather again in public in September. So with that, I bid you good night and be safe.